Welcome, friends. We're not in Narnia or in a fairy's backpack. We are coming to you, as always, from the wide world of the interwebs. I, for one, like the background. Alyson, I know you're thinking, wait a second, but no, I love it. I think it just, because I can't see the outside from the studio, so it just reminds me that there's wind and weather out there.
Does it
somewhere.
actually pick up on the recording? You all can hear the wind chimes?
Listen, but maybe it's the wind chimes in my heart. Who knows here at this
It's
point,
wonderful.
right? It's just, exactly. It's nice. It's a nice little segue there. But
We're
welcome,
having a
friends.
Zen version.
We are. Why not, right? Welcome, friends, to another episode of the Cyber Mettle podcast. I'm excited for this one. Anyone who's been a long-time listener might be like, well, you get excited for all of them. Yes, because we try to have great guests. This one in particular is near and dear to my heart. As always, I'm still Omar Sangarima. We are joined today by the wonderful Dr. Kyle David, Dr. David Privacy himself. We linked over. He got me over the hump for the AIGP. I think I'm just going to be blunt. It was something that was terrifying to me. It was definitely, it was a boogeyman that I would check under my bed for during cert prep and cert planning. But I saw him. It was fate. I saw that he was offering an amazing accelerator, and I said, you know what? No time like the present. I had seen amazing things, testimonials and whatnot, and just the deep knowledge and also the career transitioning aspect is something that I really respected. And I said, I got to get to know this guy. And it's been an absolute pleasure for the latter half of last year and into the beginning of this year. I hope it continues, right? Dr. David, I hope it's like, I can't stand this guy. But please let the folks know who you are, Doc.
Boy, how much time do we have? Do we want to introduce Alyson first, or do I just jump right into it?
Go ahead.
Jump right into it. You're good.
Yeah.
So my name's Dr. Kyle David, and a little bit of a secret. The company wasn't originally going to be Dr. David. It was something different, but that's a different story. So I'm a historian of modern China turned privacy AI guru. I have a little bit of cybersecurity background too, enough to be in a room full of smart cybersecurity people and be able to hold my own. I broke into privacy in 2021, so maybe I should step back a little bit. For most of my adult life, I always wanted to be an academic. I wanted to teach history on a sleepy university campus and grow old there and end my life, I don't know, in a classroom somewhere, peacefully, gracefully, by accident, not intentionally.
It sounded pretty grisly, I was going to say.
Yeah, sorry. So that's what I wanted to do, and I started my adult career teaching. As soon as I finished my undergraduate, I moved overseas, lived overseas teaching English as a foreign language for 9 years, and then moved back to the States in 2014. Started my PhD in Chinese history. And in 2020, as I was entering the last year of my program and my last year on the academic job market, the COVID lockdown shut down university hiring. So before I could even get started, it was over. And what made it really over for me, rather than just waiting it out for a year or two, is the fact that I had a small family with 2 kids. And we were getting ready to lose our graduate or university subsidized graduate housing, insurance, and paycheck, which was already not much of a paycheck as it is. Other options included visiting assistant professor positions, which would have required moving all around the country year by year until I found something permanent, or postdocs, which is essentially the exact same thing. And, at that point, I was in my late 30s. My wife, who had followed me around the world for 15 years by then, was very patiently waiting to start her own career and get into public health, which she's actually graduating next month. So I knew that moving around year to year.
To her.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's difficult to do any degree in your own native language. It's difficult to do it in a foreign language. And that's what she's done. So I knew that moving around year by year, I wanted certainty. The family wanted certainty. And I was just really lucky to get picked up by the U.S. Department of Energy through a Presidential Management Fellows program. And when I remember meeting my supervisor during a job fair and asking her, I don't know anything at all about privacy or IT. I come from a humanities background. And what she said to me was very telling. And she said, It doesn't matter. She said, I'm not as concerned about what you know. I'm more concerned about how you think. And if you can think, if you are a self-starter, if you're willing to learn, then I can teach you privacy and everything needed in order to run a privacy program. And she just really came across as a very warm, kind person that, was clearly going to invest in me and my career, teach me about working in the federal government and privacy and all of that. And so that's where I started in 2021. As I was getting started with privacy, I wanted to learn. I naturally turned to IAPP certifications, them being at the time the world's largest global privacy organization. They've now expanded to include AI governance, as Omar just said, and also cybersecurity law. They're starting to build out that component as well. And so I turned to them, and as I was going through their certifications, I was really surprised that there wasn't a solution on the market that worked for me and the way that I learn. There's no complete package, right? I could find, a 3-day boot camp, 8 hours a day where someone just talks at you nonstop. No time to review, no time to ask questions. You're in and you're out, and you never see that instructor ever again. There weren't flashcards, there weren't bundled practice questions. And so I did a couple of these certifications, and the whole time I'm watching Shark Tank with my kids. And I start thinking to myself, maybe I just create the solution that I would like to have. That's what I eventually did with Dr. David. And here I am 2 years later. So my first course was the CIPP United States course. For those that aren't familiar with the certifications, their IAPP certifications are largely based on a jurisdiction. So CIPP, Certified Information Privacy Professional for the United States. They have one for Europe, which focuses on the GDPR, one for Asia, for Canada, et cetera. That first course launched at the end of April 2024. So it's been close to 2 years since I launched my first course. Now have 4 courses. So CIPP-US, CIPP-E, CIPM, which is Certified Information Privacy Manager. It's the most practical and hands-on of the 4 courses I teach. And AI Governance Professional, which is the hero course right now. That's where a tremendous amount of my business comes from.
And Omar brought that up, that you did the AIGP and how it was absolutely just the thing that helped him get past that hurdle. In a couple episodes ago, he did a whole eval on a Circ Corner episode that we did. So call back for anybody who actually listens or hasn't seen that one to go back to that episode. But he specifically thanked you by name on that episode because I know that a prior exam with IAPP had given him a bit of a challenge more than he was used to. Because Omar's very good at certs. And as he said in the last episode, he does cyber okay. That was quoted by somebody the other day, by the way. But very much appreciated the way that you do approach your training in a very different way, and is grateful that you did look at the offerings that were out there and went, that's not enough for the way that different people learn differently. And you have been able to capture that and find a way to help those adjust to those different changes and to be able to succeed in what they're trying to learn. So I'll give the quick disclaimer since we're already past it. So hi, I'm Alyson Lederman. I am a lawyer, and Omar is a cybersecurity expert, and Dr. David is obviously a privacy expert, and I'm a lawyer. None of us are your expert for the purpose of the podcast today. So we have to do the little lawyer disclaimer. But we are here, as you can tell, to share our experiences and to talk about AI governance and that pathway. And I love, Dr. David, where you started, because it gives hope for those that are making a transition into this field, and that there's so many different ways to start and to get involved and to pick a different pathway within privacy, governance, AI, cybersecurity, because there are a lot of people, this is such a new area, looking from the outside in going, how do I get involved and how do I get started? You got started because you had a great counselor who looked at you and said, you just need to be able to think and to learn. And as we've had conversations with people about AI on past episodes, that seems to be a trait that we are as a society giving up voluntarily to these machines, to these tools. I don't know where my question is in there, but kind of like, what is your experience though with those that are coming to you for the training and how they're using that to get to their next level of success and that pathway for them?
So this was in the green room. Before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about how entry-level cybersecurity positions are few and far between, or that entry-level position wants so many years of experience. Privacy is having the same issue. AI governance, as far as job ads go, I think is hit or miss. I find that most people in AI governance positions were already at the organization doing something else. And some important data that we have, IAPP put out every other year they do a jobs and salary report. And in the most recent one, which I believe they published at the beginning of the calendar year, showed that 40% of respondents that were in AI governance were also privacy people. And so that seems to suggest, based on, a data sample of, 1,400 is what I want to say, somewhere around that it's privacy people overwhelmingly that are becoming dual-hatted or triple-hatted if they have other responsibilities. But I want to go back to the entry-level thing because that's very similar in the privacy world. I find that people are looking to pivot into privacy. They may be in an adjacent field, maybe they do something IT related or GRC, and they want to make themselves more competitive on the job market. So they're looking for certification to add to their resume. I also find that folks they could be in a completely unrelated field, but they see privacy as being very exciting. And I agree it is. As far as, at least compared with AI governance, which is my other, stronger reference point, it is a bit more mature. So that's where most people, I think, are coming to it. Certainly from the AI governance perspective, people are looking to differentiate themselves. They're looking to show that they have some foundational knowledge and hopefully getting a credential that will make them competitive on the job.
You mentioned that right now the AIGP is that hero cert, right? The business is coming in from there. What do you think that says about then where the industry is headed? Is there going to be a convergence there? Is there going to be specialized tracks? Is it going to be a mix? What would you say?
I have a bit to say on like the post AIGP, where could people go or what would different tracks look like? I have some thoughts on that. Your question there about what is the tremendous interest in the certification say, I think is really important. I think a lot of people understand that this is a transformational technology, that it is going to change the way that we work. I think people want to start to get their arms around the technology early so that they can start to think about how they can leverage AI to make themselves better, personally, professionally. So there's that future-proofing their career component of it, right? Don't replace me with AI. I can manage AI, right? I can help your organization govern it, which is important. So I think that's one perspective. I think another perspective is overwhelmingly, I'm finding that most of the people doing the certification are people that are already in IT or GRC. They see this as being very exciting and, they want to jump on, they want to be on for the ride. And so they want to understand the technology from that perspective. I get the feeling that while AI governance jobs are growing, we haven't quite yet seen that hockey stick growth. And I think maybe one reason for that is because we don't have that regulatory stick that is motivating organizations to either bring in a dedicated AI governance professional or to train existing people, right? To say, all right, well, now you're going to take on this role. I also think there's a lot of uncertainty in organizations regarding how exactly they're going to use the technology. Are they going to deploy it or are they going to develop it? Are they integrating it into a current service or offering that's public facing for their customers? Are they simply a user of the technology? And until I think there's either a regulatory impetus, right? There's something that says, you have to comply with a state level law or a federal law, or until the EU AI Act is fully in effect. I think folks are waiting, and in that space, right, before we have a strong regulatory trigger or before there's some type of serious incident that is a coming to God moment for organizations that say, hey, we really need to bring in a dedicated person or team to help us manage this. I think growth for jobs is going to be steady, but we're not going to yet hit that hockey stick moment. I think if you look at privacy, for example, once the general data protection regulation was enacted, you start to see, compliance go through the roof there. Privacy becoming really hot, 2016, 20 to 18, those couple of years there. In the interim, I think that other pathways would be if someone had just finished the AIGP, I've been thinking of it like in 3 different ways. So one way is to actually double down on governance and start to look for frameworks that are going to help an organization manage their organization's use, deployment, whatever, of AI end to end. And for me right now, that's 42001. I think as far as the documented information that you put together from how do you build out a dedicated policy to, what are our KPIs? How are we tracking them? How are we maintaining and monitoring the system, the management system as a whole throughout its life cycle? I think 42001 provides a really good framework for implementing an end-to-end AI governance program. So that's one route to go. Another route would be more specialized education. So for example, if you were interested in securing AI systems, ISACA has the Advanced in AI Security Management certification. That's one way to go. If you're interested in auditing systems, and there's at least one law that's in effect right now that requires the audit of certain AI models, that may be a way to go. Again, that's very specialized, and I think not until we have stronger regulations or any regulations or laws whatsoever that start to mandate that, we're probably not going to see it a whole lot. And there's ISACA has another certification for that as well. They're advanced in AI audit. So that's the second route. And the third route would be actually learning how to build solutions for organizations and how to deploy them. And I think that route would be maybe something that's like consultancy based. So an organization comes to you, they say, hey, we want to bring in AI, but we don't quite know what a good fit is. Doing some discovery, some informational interviews, learn about the organization. What are their pain points? Do they have the right data? What does their, IT infrastructure look like right now? And how could you build a solution for them? And then what would that look like, maintaining that over time? That one clearly a lot more technical. It would require more time investment unless someone already had a programming background. But those, I think for me right now are probably like the 3 different tracks that you would go if you're looking for a career in this space.
In terms of, you mentioned the law being potentially the carrot and maybe the stick at the same time. I wanted to always pick your brain, and it was never quite the time, I think, and obviously we're in AIGP mode, so we're deep in there. I didn't want to derail anything, right? We had questions to get to, we had knowledge to transfer. But what's your take on we can't regulate or else we can't innovate? I always want to see like where you kind of wade in there.
I feel that the law can provide certainty for organizations, what can and can't you do. And I think when you have, if you're thinking, you're starting at the top of a mountain in a go-kart and you just want to go as fast as possible. Me, I'm very risk adverse, so I'm going to go quite slow unless there are literal guardrails on the side of the mountain.
I don't want to die. Right.
And they're well bolted on, right? And I have brakes, then I'm going to feel comfortable. So I understand that organizations can be overburdened. I understand, and we already have a pretty dynamic AI regulatory landscape globally right now. So, we do have the EU AI Act, those obligations for providers of high-risk systems. It looks like it's going to be kicked out to the end of 2027, but there are still other requirements that are in there. We have South Korea's Basic AI Act. We've got a handful of laws here in the United States, which I don't think are going anywhere unless, like Colorado looks like they're actually going to roll back part of their legislation. I don't think California is going to change anything. I don't think New York is going to change anything. Texas has a pretty formidable, it's not overly burdensome, but it does create requirements for organizations. The point I wanted to make is I think we already have we already have laws that require organizations to think about what their role is, how that system is being deployed, how that system interacts with personal data, and what type of challenges there are there. I think there's a happy medium. I think we can regulate and innovate at the same time. When we look at technologies like aircraft, I mean, our commercial aviation is heavily regulated, probably one of the most regulated industries on the planet.
Sure.
And there's a good reason for that, right? Because people get into these metal tubes and fly around the world every day, tons of times. And we want people to be safe. When you think about developing medicine, right? Medicine and the development clinical trials, that is very regulated as well, and also for good reason. I understand a lot of the existential risks that folks in the AI safety community are trying to make well known to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of those catastrophic risks are real, right? That there is a threat there. So, I'm in favor of more regulation than we currently have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also in favor of a unified framework that makes it as easy as possible for organizations to create value for their customers and not weigh them down. And I'm afraid that AI regulation is moving in a similar direction as privacy, where we have, in the United States, we have 20 different privacy laws at least. And globally, we have 80% of the world's population covered by privacy regulation. So it's a challenging space. I like that because it means job security.
Sure.
But also just
Fair.
from like wanting to be like a good human, I think, we need to really consider the risks that are inherent in this technology or that are potential in the technology.
And I agree with you. I think there needs to be, it would be definitely beneficial for there to be an overarching framework at a federal level that could apply. This particular administration hasn't given us that yet. And I don't know if it's because those that are influencing the current politics and the way that these things are playing out, because of the funding coming from those that are saying, oh, it has to be innovation without regulation, as opposed to a much more middle ground of, like you said, we can have innovation and regulation. It doesn't have to be all extreme one way or the other. Same thing as politics, right? We can find a way to get to that area where it satisfies both need for safety and innovation, and to be able to get there. But we just haven't yet. And like you said, it is a bit of job security when it's a patchwork quilt. Arguing in law is very much the same thing. When we look at that stuff, we say, okay, well, our state does or doesn't talk about it. So let's look to other states. And is there a federal? And if there's not other federal, then we're persuaded by what the other states are doing. But it doesn't give businesses a good sense of what is it that I need to be doing, unless it's a business who does have overseas and EU related stuff where then you go, well, now you have to follow that, as opposed to just guidance or type of thing. So depending on the scope and the extent of the business and how far they spread, that's going to help dictate what's in place for them to have to apply. Sorry, bit of a tangent, but my lawyer brain kind of went into looking at the patchwork quilt and going into, it would help in this scenario, I think, to have much more of a universal framework that we don't currently have.
Yeah, I agree.
So
and it's just, it strikes me because, it's almost as though I was trying to plan to get to a place, right? With questions here. Look at this. We're getting a little bit more prepared on these interviews. Look at us. Who would have thought? Not me. But you have a reputation for being able to innovate in spaces that have themselves the reputation for maybe being a little tighter and a little kind of closed down for innovation. So how did you came in, as you said, the origin story at the top of the segment, come in, it's how you think, we can train you up, but you brought AI literacy, right, into the government space. You've stood up innovative AI tools within the government space, and anyone who's worked there or the reputation that space has of, that's like moving mountains. How are you personally able to strike that balance between obviously guardrails, but also innovate in those types of spaces?
Working in the federal government is a challenge, and what makes it challenging is the breadth of stakeholders that you're working with and trying to balance every organization's needs. And so, for example, where I was in the Office of the Chief Information Officer, clearly we wanted to stand up a chatbot that was going to be on our network and protected, that folks could help to use to do research or to help them carry out their work. One of the major issues that privacy often has, and this is not unique to me and my work in the federal government. I think you talk to any privacy person, you're gonna hear this same type of story. Privacy is often seen as the don't get them involved, they're going to slow this down, or don't get them involved, they're going to tell us no, and they'll have a bunch of legal reasons for doing that. And so often in government, and again, I hear this from colleagues all around the world, often just trying to understand what's going on, what type of projects there are, and being able to contribute, right? How do we do this right? How do we do this the best way so that we don't have to stop or redeploy, undeploy, turn something off so that we can be compliant? And I was just really lucky that our office, the Office of Privacy Management and Compliance, at the time was located in the Office of the Chief Information Officer. I know they're going through a reorg like much of the government. I'm not sure if it's still there. But because we were in the IT shop, when other folks throughout the department were standing up different types of projects or data collections, we heard about it. So it was easy for us to get involved. There was a lot of interest in the AI literacy program. It was something that everyone wanted to learn about and learn about it from a privacy preserving angle as well, right? At that time, right? And so this was, it was still under the previous administration. AI was very new. People knew that they didn't know a lot. And so when you're giving away free training, learning a little bit about AI literacy, what the intersection with privacy is, how do you use this, right? What are some things to keep front of mind as you're working with an internal chatbot? What is shadow AI and why you shouldn't do that? It was pretty easy to find a willing audience for that pilot. And then for Energy PT or Energy PT, again,
I love the name. When I did the research, I was like, this is amazing of a name.
It was very cool. I unfortunately I can't claim that. I don't know who came up with the name, but I agree it's awesome. It was exciting. We had a budget, we had a mandate. It was one of those projects that we were able to get everyone behind and we were able to get buy-in for. One thing that made, from a privacy point of view, that made that project pretty easy for us is that we had taken an instance, created our own instance of Gemini Flash. I think it was 1.5 at the time. And it was on our own server. It was cut off from the internet. And so we didn't have to worry about people. I mean, we still had an acceptable use policy. Everyone that got an account to work with the chatbot, they had to go through training. And so, one of the requirements there is that you don't input any personally identifiable information into the system. But the fact that it was on our own server, it was isolated, it wasn't connected to the internet, in case something got uploaded by accident, we didn't have to worry about unauthorized access or an unauthorized disclosure because we owned the infrastructure or we were renting it or whatever you want to say. So that was a pretty easy project. I can imagine in the private sector, especially if you're developing a model, if your organization is developing it from scratch, trying to use the organization's data or trying to enrich that data with commercially available information, now you're starting to tiptoe into areas with a lot of nuance that I think most people who are gung-ho about AI, who bring it in, stand up a use case, let's get everyone using it, what can it do, how can we create efficiencies? I think in that case, it would maybe a little more challenging for a privacy person to insert themselves and say, hey, let's pump the brakes and make sure that we're approaching this the right way.
Makes sense. And definitely echo if you can ground it or you can understand what the infrastructure is like. And I think it harkens back to what you mentioned earlier, where here are the 3 tracks. As you were going through those 3 tracks, though, Doc, I said, he's doing all 3. he's saying that they're separate tracks, but, he's sitting there, going through all three as, in definite respect
They're
to
not
that, right?
mutually exclusive. They're
Sure.
not mutually exclusive. Yeah.
Of course. And so so that's kind of where you are, right? In terms of like how you got there, what you went through, picking up the skills there, understanding. I love also harkening back to listening to your customers, listening to what the folks need, and then, sitting there and understanding what the stakeholder landscape, where the overlap is, where the niches are and whatnot. What would you say, again, your training, take your training out of it, right? Obviously the recommendation is going to be Dr. David or bust, in my personal opinion, right? Not just saying it because you're here. I say it when you're out of the room, right? Which is the true measure. But somebody breaking it, somebody is thinking, okay, it's hot still. I'm hearing a lot of things about cyber. I'm hearing a lot of things about privacy. What would you say is the toolkit, or kind of maybe the first few steps of making that transition, either career switcher or otherwise?
Yeah. So the way that I think about this is there are three things that you can do. Two of them you have complete control over. One of them you have influence over if you're employed. And I'll get to that in a minute. So the first thing that we all have control over is what we learn and what we do in our spare time. So if you're interested in getting into cyber, AI governance, or privacy, find something that you want to learn. It could be a certificate. This could be some type of technical course online if you want to do pen testing, hands-on keyboard type work. If you're interested in getting into privacy, are you interested in the legal aspect of it, or more of the privacy engineering? Again, more technical component. So identify what you're interested in. And if you don't know what you're interested in, and maybe you should do this anyway, try and read broadly. Find other experiences, use your whatever LLM that you're subscribed to, and, ask you like, hey, I'm interested in pursuing a career in privacy. What would the different career pathways look like? Or same thing for cyber. And think about what career advancement in those different pathways looks like as well. So what do you want to learn? And, if it's a certification that you want to get into, there are pretty clear pathways for that. If this is a younger person or someone returning to school, then, what does a degree pathway look like? The second thing that you have control over is who you spend your time with. And I strongly recommend, and this is for folks that don't have any experience, they're looking to gain experience with this field. I strongly recommend that folks look into local chapters of global organizations to attend events, to network with people, and to actually volunteer. For example, IAPP, they have 100 knowledge nets is what they call their local chapters all over the world. ISACA as well, chapters all over the world. ISSA is more focused on cybersecurity, but again, chapters at least all over the country. And then you have online organizations like the Cloud Security Alliance and OWASP. And all of these organizations are always looking for volunteers. So if you're looking for local in-person events, if you're looking for 100% virtual remote events, there are organizations that you can get involved with, look for volunteer opportunities, and start spending some of the extra time that you have doing something, writing a white paper, proofreading a white paper. I know for ISACA, and so this is one reason why I really recommend you volunteer. So this is something I've been preaching for a while. I decided, well, I'm actually going to do it. And I got involved with the local ISACA chapter here in the greater Washington, D.C. area. It's the second largest chapter in the world, right behind London. We have over 4,000 members. And so I got involved casually attending events. There was a call for actual positions throughout their board of directors. And so I threw my hat in the ring, met with a couple different people. They made me associate director of audit and risk. And what's really exciting about that position is the function has historically been focused very narrowly on financial risk. So the chapter has different obligations that it has to satisfy for global ISACA. And when I got involved and I was asking about the audit and risk function, I said, oh, well, over 4,000 members, that's a lot of PII. what does your privacy impact assessment process look like? And out of confidentiality, I won't share exactly what I learned.
Of course, they won't talk to you again, right? You got to keep it. You got to keep it
But
tight.
after a lot of back and forth, they said, "You've got a lot of really great ideas. We'd love for you to come in and help out with this." So, it was me just kind of taking a chance, and now I'm in a leadership position. So that's something that I strongly recommend for everyone. Another really sneaky volunteer position, and you need to be careful with this. I'm on a bunch of subreddits, and there's a subreddit for ISO 27001. And I was going through there the other day, and someone had started a post that said, "Hey, I just passed the lead auditor certification. I have zero experience, but I want some. I will work for free, and I can give you 20 hours a week." And no joke, he had 10 replies in that thread like, "I'm DMing you." So, I mean, like, that may even be viable as well. That if you can demonstrate that, hey, I've done a little bit of work, I've done this certification, I have no experience, I will work for free. That's maybe something that's a potential, promising avenue there. I shared that with someone the other day, and then I kind of had to hit the brakes. And I think this is maybe something Alyson might be thinking as well. If you're going to be helping someone with ISO audits, even if it's just document review, which you would be able to do remotely, you're looking at proprietary company information. You would likely need to sign an NDA with whoever you're volunteering with.
Right.
And like working within a proper records management system. That's one thing. Second is you want to make sure that that person that you're volunteering with is indemnifying you from anything that you might overlook as you're a volunteer. So you shouldn't, as a volunteer, have to go out and buy professional liability insurance. So if you think that's a good idea, if you find some rando on Reddit to give you work for free, those need to be like your first two questions is, how are we going to safeguard proprietary business information? And can you indemnify me against anything?
The only thing I'd add to that is also because I thought you were going here, Doc, but also make sure that person is authorized to be sharing that information with you too. That's the piece, right? Rando on Reddit is going to stick with me today.
I was going to say hashtag Rando on
Reddit. I think that could be a segment, right? Like where we just bring in like, this is randomly something I read on Reddit. Is it, or is it, right? We just say wild stuff and then we're like what is that?
What? 3 truths and a lie?
Sure. But
Rando on Reddit.
But Rando on Reddit. But like, that's kind of a way that I also got a little bit of cyber experience, Doc. I'm not going to lie, where I just volunteered with, and this is making me feel 900 years old, but with like my local church, right? And it was, so it was about 12, now it was about 14, 15 years ago, because it was stuff I was trying to do to get, some reps, as the kids say. See, I'm still hip, but, but it was, the bar was very low. Obviously, it was a local church, and so they were just here's a couple of things that you can do to kind of maybe lock down your email presence. I think my big innovation was MFA, which back then was a big deal. Still is. Not enough people do it. I'll say that, right? Shout out to Daniel Elliott from NIST with his tips there. But there's opportunities now. Also, to your point, right? That's if you can. Right. And I know that you're caveating it big time, where it's, you have the time, you're able to, and kind of go there. I think, as you said, in the green room, we were discussing where from an enterprise or a corporate area, that the demand for that free labor upfront can be, it can go both ways, right? It can be a great way for you to get some reps in, but then it can also be like, well, why the heck is this part of the job interview process, right? No. So I love that you ensconced it in this is a volunteer situation.
Yeah.
It's still equitable on both sides versus, you're getting your reps in and then you're getting taken advantage of. I would have never thought that, but that makes a heck of a lot of sense. I thought you were going to say like, go be a mod on some of these,
the Reddit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like I was so surprised, and I was surprised because it's a good idea, right? Just to put yourself out there online.
Sure.
And I was also surprised that, again, I hope that if these are actual auditors that are doing audits, that they already have something like a subcontractor agreement. There's some agreement they have with the client that says I'm allowed to bring on subcontractors or something like that. But to
That's a
your
big
point,
assumption.
yes,
It's a scary thing, but it was also, like you said, how it got so much heat, right? Because there's some
yeah,
Reddits where you're like, okay, there's only like 500 people in here total. It's a niche of a niche, and obviously a lot in cyber can be, especially when you niche it down to specific stuff for, say, ISO.
yeah,
But the fact that it got that much turnaround,
yeah,
it absolutely does make sense. But to your point, getting those reps and getting something to show versus something to tell and something to talk about. And you were very ardent about that, even in your trainings, and it was, the cohort was a bunch of professionals. We were all gung ho for the AIGP, but you were very even handed and going, here, listen, yes, we're going through this, getting you through the test, but, and that's what I loved. You were very transparent with, got to be able to show stuff, and here's what you can do for practice, and here's how you can get hands-on things, and it can, by the way, maybe help you retain some of what we're covering. But you were always a very solid and, I think, grounded mix of here's theory, here's practice. You have to mix both or else you're not going to have a good day.
absolutely. Yeah. And I'm a visual learner. I need to see something. And then I don't know what type of learner this is, maybe every learner, but I need concrete examples too. And so for me, all the theory in the world is not going to stick unless I have something concrete. And for me as a learner, chatbots have been a real game changer.
Yeah.
Because if I'm having difficulty thinking about, well, like, what does this actually look like in practice? Then, I can use LLMs to do research and maybe find a YouTube video or, I don't know, some type of blog post that actually runs through, what does this actually look like? So, when you're looking at ISO requirements, for example, what is the actual business process, right? How do we incorporate or integrate this into the business process to produce evidence so that when an auditor comes along, we can say, here's our evidence that we're fulfilling this requirement. And with a lot, and this is one thing that it was a gap that I saw in the teaching materials when I've been doing all of this training. That's one thing that I've tried to incorporate into all of my trainings is that here's this idea and this is what it actually looks like. Something like AI incidents, for example. What could go wrong when you're using a chatbot at work? Well, a lot could go wrong. And here are some examples.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was always funny. Sometimes you'd bring stuff from the news, and then sometimes you'd concoct like some ideas that like weren't really far fetched, but I could tell you were trying to, protect the innocent, right? Like you were trying to bring in, examples there. I mean, Alyson, anything you kind of, want to be mindful of your time. I know you're slanging and banging in terms of, learning, teaching, and whatnot. But Alyson, anything for the doc before we let him go?
No, I mean, I think anything that you want to share with the audience as they are looking to transition that maybe we didn't cover that you think might be extra tips. I especially appreciated the go find the global groups that have local ones, and not just to learn, but to get that experience you can work through and to network, right? If we're getting lost in a sea of job applications and AI scanning those, the best way to get a job is going to be finding that connection with somebody who has a connection to get you in the door. So I thought that was great advice. But is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, just one other thing. So as far as breaking in goes, there's, you have control over what you learn. You have control over who or where you spend your free time. The other one is something we don't have control over, but maybe some influence. If you're employed, if you're a student, if you have a local church or mosque or synagogue or whatever, asking those people if there's a need. So within your own organization, do you already have a privacy team? And if so, can you look over their shoulder? Can you work with them if they allow for 5 hours a week on a special project? Same thing for cyber, for AI governance. If you're already in the organization and you have some flexibility there, that's another potential option as well. At the very least, you have people that you could talk to, right? Again, from a networking perspective, to see what types of opportunities are open within your organization or maybe elsewhere. So I talk to a lot of folks about breaking into these different fields, and I'm always looking for more advice to share. And those three ways, from my own personal experience and from sharing with others, seem to be pretty good starters.
That last bit, I think, is critical, and people don't think of that. I mean, that's how I have shifted within my own experience and wanting to do something else. It was reaching out to another lawyer of like, hey, can I sit on that trial with you? And like, you don't even do this practice area. Well, I want to learn it. Can I go through that experience? And so for people to even think of that, I've seen where to be really successful, sometimes you create your own job in that organization and you can put forth here's what I'm learning. Here's what I want to do. Let me help apply that and work into that, to where eventually you're writing your own position, which is something they may need. And I've seen that. And like I said, my husband has actually done that at several universities now in crisis communications and marketing and all of those things, and has started in one position and said, but this is really where you want me. And here's the skills. And they went, yeah, let's do that. Because sometimes the organizations don't think outside of, well, this is the form and this was the job I was told to fill, and not realizing that there is a need. So if you can show the need and you can show the skill, that gives them an opportunity to not have to go through a whole outside process, use someone they trust, someone they know who already has that interest, and move you up in there. So that was great advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope it helps someone.
I think so. I think it absolutely will. Doc, for closing it out, where can people find you? Where can people find your materials? Where should they reach out to?
If you're interested in connecting with me, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you go onto LinkedIn and you look for Kyle David, I don't know how many Kyle Davids there are, but there's only one Dr. David with a bright orange background. So that's me. If you're interested in any of the courses I offer, best place is drdavidprivacy.com.
And we'll put the link to both in the summary so people can find you easy. And I can say I follow your posts, and you're always sharing wonderful information with detailed reports and the latest information in the AI governance and in privacy. And I see it come up all the time, and either save it or try to read it when I have that moment to do so. So it is absolutely worth following along with Dr. David on LinkedIn.
I appreciate it.
So
Thank you both so much.
cool.
Thanks for being on. And as always, we like to close out. Keep it cyber metal. Until next time, take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Awesome.